Sauron and the One Ring. The One Ring is the key feature of Tolkien's entire Lord of the Rings saga, and the greatest work achieved by Middle-earth's greatest adversary, Sauron, capturing the imagination of millions over the last century. Taking inspiration from much of the Norse and Anglo-Saxon history Tolkien was so fond of, the ring, as well as its counterparts, serve as items and symbols of great power in Arda. The idea of inscribing one's possessions was also included on the One Ring, exhibiting the third and second-to-last passage from the famous ring verse, written in Elvish symbols, yet spelling out words of the Dark Lord's own black speech of Mordor. Why did Sauron create his One Ring? What powers did it give him, or anyone else who wore it? How was it the same or different from the other rings of power? And what if he regained possession of it? We welcome you back to another video from Secrets of the Rings, where we celebrate and delve deep into all things Tolkien. Today we will explore the focal point of the War of the Ring, the One Ring, the ruling ring, Isildur's Bane. If you enjoy our videos, please like and subscribe for more content, and let us know what you would like to see more of. In order to understand the One Ring, it is helpful to recognize the origins of Sauron and his lust for power. In the earliest ages of Arda, Sauron, also known as Mairon, or Gorthaur, the Cruel, was a Maiar in the service of Aule, the Valar of smithing and crafting. From him he learned so much about the materials of the world and how to manipulate them, but it was from Melkor that he was most influenced in the end. Melkor, of great power and wickedness, preyed on Sauron's natural affinity for order and control, thus inciting his secret desire to dominate the world and all life upon it. He would join Melkor's ranks and serve him throughout the wars of the First Age before claiming the title of Dark Lord for himself thereafter. The story of the One Ring truly begins in the Second Age. Around the year 1500, Sauron sought to increase his power by corrupting the Elves and pandering to their desire to recreate the beauty of Valinor in Middle-earth, a motive none too dissimilar from that of Sauron's. Under the guise of a fair form known as Annatar, Lord of Gifts and an emissary of the Valar, Sauron first looked to Lindon, but not Gil-galad nor Elrond would take counsel with him. It was in Eregion, just west of the Misty Mountains, that Annatar would find the vulnerable elven smiths he needed. For in that land the Noldor desired ever to increase the skill and subtlety of their works. Moreover, they were not at peace in their hearts, since they had refused to return into the west. And they desired both to stay in Middle-earth, which indeed they loved, and yet to enjoy the bliss of those that had departed. Therefore they hearkened to Sauron, and they learned of him many things, for his knowledge was great. In those days the smiths of Ost-in-Edhil surpassed all that they had contrived before, and they took thought, and they made rings of power. But Sauron guided their labors, and he was aware of all that they did, for his desire was to set a bond upon the Elves to bring them under his vigilance. J.R.R. Tolkien, The Silmarillion, of the Rings of Power and the Third Age, page 287. The Rings of Power were forged in Eregion in the late 1500s of the Second Age, and 16 there were made by the Gwaith y Myrdain, a brotherhood consisting largely of Noldorin smiths. Meanwhile, Celebrimbor created 3 other rings outside of Sauron's knowledge, but still using his craft. Narya, Nenya, and Vilya, the elven rings of fire, water, and air, respectively. These were the most valued by the Dark Lord, as they were the most useful in staving off the decays of time. In Second Age 1600, Sauron secretly forged the One Ring in the fires of Orodruin. Into its forging he poured much of his own fea, the Quenya word for soul, as it needed to be powerful enough to do what he required of it. The Master Ring was the only one of its kind to be completely round and unadorned, displaying no jewels, but an inscription, spelling out the black speech of Mordor. One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. Tolkien says of the ruling ring that it contained the powers of all the others and controlled them, so that its wearer could see the thoughts of all those that used the lesser rings, could govern all that they did, and in the end, could utterly enslave them. He reckoned, however, without the wisdom and subtle perceptions of the elves. J.R.R. Tolkien, Letter 131, to Milton Waldman. With the One Ring, he planned to gain control of the elves, his greatest adversaries, and bring about his dominion of Middle-earth. However, once Sauron places the One Ring on his hand, those bearing the elven rings were made instantly aware of his deception and refused to wear them for as long as Sauron possesses the One. He would wage war on the elves, destroying Eregion and slaughtering Celebrimbor before reclaiming the other rings of power and effectively becoming the ruler of Middle-earth for a time. 9 of the other rings went to men and 7 to dwarves. The 9 men would fade into the Wraith world as ghostly servants of Sauron. But how did the One Ring affect Sauron's abilities? What about the others who have worn it? Like the other rings of power, the One enhances the natural abilities of those who wear it, in addition to preventing the decay of time. Thus, for Sauron, it feeds into his desire for perfection and domination, to be a god-king with authority over all. His will exerted would bring about absolute order and the worship of his might. This craving of control is instilled into the very essence of the ring, and thus empowers Sauron even further whilst he wears it. He became even more cunning and manipulative, but that was not necessarily needed for him to corrupt men, as is seen in his time with the Númenóreans. It is unclear whether he uses the ring in Númenor, but Sauron certainly had the capability to successfully convince the greatest race of men to exist to worship Morgoth and sail west against the Valar, with or without the One Ring. That is all the more testament to the ring's inherent nature as a creation of such evil and what it does to its possessors. Those who wore the One Ring could see the unseen world and were invisible to those who could not, but were hyper-visible to the Nazgûl, as mortals within the Wraith world, a half-seen and unseen existence. The ring bore many characteristics that made it seem alive, or as if it had a mind of its own. It was known to shift in size to fit the wearer's finger, and was believed to always find ways to get back to its master. It dimmed a person's vision, but sharpened their hearing and filled their hearts with lust for supreme power. Delusions of grandeur plagued the mind as the One Ring slowly and surely corrupted its wearer. All the while, the ring sought to be with its master, attracting chaos and ill fate to its wrongful owners. Sauron likely never imagined that anyone would wear the One Ring except himself. It was a part of him, and his key weapon for success against the elves. But after the War of the Last Alliance to conclude the Second Age, he would no longer possess his prized creation. Isildur, son of Elendil and a high-ranking Númenórean, slashes at the hand of Sauron at the slopes of Mount Doom, chopping off the finger that bore the One Ring with the broken blade of his father's sword Narsil. At that moment, Sauron lost his physical form and his armies were decimated. Isildur would be the first to carry the ring after the Dark Lord, refusing to destroy it and keeping it as an heirloom. Isildur's time with the One Ring was short-lived. In the second year of the Third Age, he was ambushed by orcs during his journey north to Arnor. In what became the disaster of Gladden Fields, Isildur jumped into the Gladden River with the ring, but it slipped off his finger. He rose from the water, no longer invisible, and was struck down by arrows. The ring was one step closer to its master, but would remain missing and out of the realm's knowledge until Third Age 2463. All but one of the other beings that became ring-bearers were hobbits. The first hobbit to discover the One Ring while boating was Deagol, who would only have it for a few minutes before the corrupting influence of the ring caused his cousin Smeagol to strangle him. Realizing he was invisible, Smeagol would use it to sneak and steal and eavesdrop, before being rejected and exiled even by his own grandmother. Then known as Gollum, for the scratchy sounds he made with his throat. He spent much of the next 400 years being further corrupted by the One Ring, extending his life far beyond its natural range. He fed on raw fish and goblins from the misty mountains, where he had retreated from the sun, which began to burn his skin. The ring, or precious, as he called it, had taken a nasty toll on Gollum. He was practically lost to madness by the time he met Bilbo Baggins, who acquired the ring from him during the quest for Erebor in Third Age 2491. Bilbo quickly put the One Ring to use, becoming invisible to escape from Gollum, doing so again later on to survive encounters with the mighty Smaug, and even disappearing at his own birthday party. He possessed it for many years, prolonging his youthfulness as he grew old and fond of it. Before he departed Bag End in Third Age 3001, he was reluctant to leave the ring behind and grew frustrated with Gandalf for encouraging him to do so. But at last, he was able to rid himself of the One Ring, leaving it behind for his nephew. Like the other hobbits, Frodo Baggins is able to withstand the effects of bearing the One Ring for quite a long time, as hobbits were the purest of heart by nature in Middle-earth. He never wears it for nearly 17 years of keeping it, until he is called to deliver it to Samath Naur, the volcanic fissure where Sauron forged the One Ring, and the only place where it could have been destroyed. Thus began the quest of the ring, which would see the mighty ornament momentarily held by Tom Bombadil, who is merely unaffected by its influence and harbored no desire for it, as well as spending time in the hand of Samwise Gamgee. Sam would possess the One Ring for a short time in the fight against Shelob and his rescue of Frodo. He never puts it on, but has to fight off the rising urge to seek revenge against Gollum, thinking him responsible for Frodo's death. Meanwhile, Gollum, as well as Saruman, had searched for the One Ring for hundreds of years. The longing for the means to power attracted the attention of all beings. Sauron, in alliance with Saruman, hunted down the Fellowship at any chance possible throughout the War of the Ring, the entire conflict that arose in Third Age 3018 during the struggle to protect Middle-earth from Sauron's dominion. The corrupting influence of the One Ring proves too great for Frodo, who in the end failed the mission as he stood above the fissure at Mount Doom, until Gollum, in his wicked obsession, snatches the ring from him and falls into the cracks of Doom, ending the life of the One Ring, as well as Sauron's ability to assume a physical form. With much of his soul bound to the ring, he is effectively banished from Middle-earth as a dark cloud blown away by the wind. By the grace of the One, Eru Ilúvatar, the kingdom of men endured, and the world knew peace again. What if Sauron reclaimed the One Ring? If Sauron had successfully reclaimed the One Ring, it would have ended the use of the 3 Elven Rings. This would prevent Galadriel's protecting Lothlorien from the attacks from Dol Guldur, and would have affected Gandalf in his vital face-offs against the Witch King and Saruman's orcs. The men of the West would be slaughtered at the Morannon, and the dwarves of Erebor and men of Dale would have been forced to die or surrender. Saruman would have continued to destroy and rule the Shire, and the entire realm would become the subjects of Sauron's supremacy. Even in the Third Age, Sauron is powerful enough to have had the advantage in the War of the Ring. He is a divine being, obsessed with exerting his will on the world, and the absence of the One Ring was the only thing preventing Middle-earth from assured destruction. If it was not for the destruction of Sauron's favorite toy, he would have likely succeeded in the end, save the interference of Eru Ilúvatar, an event Sauron was worthy of once before. The One Ring was created with intentions of pure evil. It could have never been wielded by anyone else to achieve their greatest deeds for good. It would only tease them with the chance to do so before dragging them into madness. The ring's creation may have been worth nothing to Sauron in the end, but luckily for us at least, it has been the centerpiece of some of our favorite stories ever told, and has served all fans as a valuable warning against the allure of greed, pride, and faith in technology. What do you think would have happened if Sauron never lost the One Ring, or if the Elves never made their own? Are there any characters you think would be most interesting to see wield it? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks again for joining us in another exploration of Tolkien's Legendarium, and stay tuned for more fascinating videos. Be sure to like and subscribe and give us a follow on Instagram at Secrets of the Rings. Until next time, Namarie.